Hey, 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 and welcome back to the show. I have a guest today named Michele Demetriou. Is it? Did I get that right? Michele is a peer of mine that I admire and respect her work. And so I asked her to come onto the show just for others to know that what her service was and that she was available, because I really do think there's a need for it. Michele, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, Kim, thanks so much for having me on. My name is Michele Demetriou. I'm a mindset coach for professional athletes, and my focus is on helping them create lives that feel as good as they look. And, it's been incredibly powerful work, and working with men on emotions and things like that has been really, really fascinating.
Tell me a little bit about the feel as good as they look.
Well, you look at young men, I would say my sweet spot for this group is like anywhere from like 23 to 40, typically like 25 to 40, 38, somewhere in there. And so here are young men, oftentimes not even educated, that are making millions of dollars, some of them coming out of very challenging homes and backgrounds, making millions of dollars. When we see them, they're playing their sport, making touchdowns, hitting free throws, 3-point shots, slamming home runs, whatever it might be. And, they're making millions, walking the red carpet, beautiful women on their side. We see them at all the popular things, and we think that's what their lives look like. That may be what it looks like on the outside, but they're human beings with just a kind of extraordinary talent that just, human beings with human brains, just like all of us, with that have an exceptional, extraordinary talent that we have decided that they get paid a lot of money. And so we assume that, I think the average person assumes that they have the world by the tail, that everything is going their way. They can do whatever they want. They can pay for whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. And like, that's, they have financial freedom. So, and they're famous. So what could be better than that?
We decide what they get paid, or we decide they get paid a lot of money. That's super interesting. And it's what instantly came to mind was when they're at their lowest, or when they're in their challenging moments, does that play on their mind? Like, I'm just an entertainer. Like, I'm just the person who's got to do the part, who's got to get tell me, yeah, I like to get into the weeds. You know that much about me, right?
It's fascinating because I don't think the average person would believe that almost universally, the first thing clients or potential clients come to me with is a lack of confidence. Mm-hmm. I don't think the average person would look at a 27-year-old making $27 million and think, and doing whatever they want, being lauded in the press as like the best this, the best that, and they lack confidence. And you have to, one thing that's really fascinating about this group is that they are the top 1%ers. They've probably been identified as an athlete since they were 10 or 12 years old, at least. And so their whole identity is based on them as an athlete, and if that's ever shaken in any way, shape, or form, if they feel like, oh, this might be coming to an end, I might be traded, I might be released, I might not have my contract renewed, I might have a career-ending injury, they don't even really know who they are oftentimes. It's like their identity is 100% as an athlete, and who they are as a human being, as a man, is an unknown to them.
That is fascinating. And it's the same for us though, right? When we're not a mom, when we're not producing at work, it still comes back to our lack of confidence as a human on the deepest level, our unworthiness, mm-hmm. and tied to producing, right? Being,
yes,
until it's not good enough, and then being thrown or tossed aside.
Yeah. And the thing that I would say, the only difference as a person who super identified as being a mom and a wife, then I was dismissed as a wife. My ex left totally unexpectedly. And then, my children I have 3 children and 3 grown sons now, and they're all 16 months apart. So I left, I lost them very quickly in terms of them leaving my home to go to school. Within 1 year, I no longer had children at home. And so it was like, who am I? Exactly the question I had for myself. The difference is that my name wasn't known. I wasn't a famous person. When that happened to me, social media wasn't the thing that it is now. And these young people have grown up on social media. Their names are known oftentimes around the world. And, everybody knows them and knows their business, kind of, so to speak. So that exacerbates it. Like, imagine that, the brightest spotlights in the world being on you. You take somebody like Michael Phelps, for example, that came out with mental health struggles. That was such an incredibly brave thing to do, because number one, he was one of the first. It hadn't been done. He had all these issues with drinking and using Ambien and reckless driving, He was known around the world. And so he goes through this, and it's not him, it's not just his little network that knows about what's going on with him. It's the entire world. And they're young people having to deal with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was talking to a young guy yesterday that's doing a summit on basically creating wealth. And he's speaking to the 17 to 21-year-olds, him being one. And, we were talking about the mindset, and how we grew up and how all of this stuff plays in. And it's really fascinating, the pressure because of social media, the pressure that is on the younger generation. And he was, just kind of talking like, well, he says, what I see in my generation is that they know how to use social media, but it doesn't mean they actually, they know how to use it and make it look a certain way and get the popularity and but it doesn't mean there's skin behind it, some actual. And I was like, that is fascinating, because I see the biggest struggle for women over 50 working with coaches or people who are moving and transitioning into the online space, is that's their biggest pain point, is not knowing or understanding how to use social media and having to move through all the shame of being seen. So these guys are already seen. Everyone knows who they are. You see them on the poster, you see them. And so it's almost like having to disclose or to hide in order to hold their position. So your brain is on protection mode. It's everything.
Well, it was fascinating. I was out with an NBA player, and his date was a winter and summer Olympics athlete. She's participated in both the winter and the summer sports. And she asked me to get a photo of her. We were on a rooftop, and I'm taking a selfie, something for her to post on. I said, wow, I couldn't believe it. It was the angles and the lighting. And finally she just ended up doing it herself. It was so important to her that this looked exactly right, that this was perfect. I was dumbfounded by that. Another thing we have to remember too, is young people, they use social media, they use texting. They're not talking to people the way you and I did growing up. It's very, very formatted. And this baseball player that I'm working with, he finally just got off social media, because he was, he's a pitcher. One game he would be, oh my gosh, you're the greatest. We're so thrilled to have you on our team. The next game was, please leave, please get traded. We don't want to have anything to do with you. And so it's that what that does to your mindset is just not even to be believed.
What brought you into, or drove you into wanting to work with these particular people?
As I say, I have 3 grown sons, and I'm sorry for this light. I've got sunlight.
There's a prism of light of imperfection coming across your face, and it's fine.
It's the sunlight coming in. So I have 3 sons that, as I said, are 16 months apart. I have 2 biological children. They're 13 months apart. And with my adopted son, they're all 16 months apart. And so, I actually, my son that is adopted, which I hate to say he's adopted because he feels like of me, but I met him when he was 11, and he was when we were living in Chicago, and he grew up in the ghettos, the hood of Chicago. And he played basketball with one of my sons and started coming to my house a lot. And about 2 weeks in, asked, he and my son asked for a meeting and asked if I would adopt him. And I always had a house full of extras, but he was something special. So fast forward, long story. If you've seen the movie The Blind Side, that's my story, except my story is about 10 times better. And I finally was able to adopt this child when he was 14. Life-changing for me, life-changing for him. And so because my boys were in sports, and he ended up playing D1 basketball, but the other boys were always involved in sports as well. And so there's always a lot of boys in my house, and a lot of them who ended up going to college on sports scholarships, and some of them that became professional athletes. And so for some reason, I was always a person that, in my household or phone calls or whatever. And to this day, this still happens. These guys would like, hey, can I come over and talk to you? I need to talk to you about something. So it kind of started that way. And actually, when I got certified, I was a relationship coach. I focused on relationships and really didn't enjoy it that much. I enjoyed the relationship part, but I didn't enjoy working with people that were divorced. And I had a mom that had 3 sons in the NBA that said to me, I can't believe you're not working with professional athletes. Do you have any idea what these guys are struggling with? And, she proceeded to tell me through a mom's eyes. And she was about the 5th person that had said to me, I can't believe you're not working with professional athletes. And yes, I know probably more professional athletes than the average person does, but it's not like I have this bevy of professional athletes, And so anyway, it kind of started that just at suggestion. And then I was in a mastermind group at an event, and I knew I was switching my niche, and we made a commitment that we were going to stick to this, whatever niche we chose, for a year. And I mean, after I said that this was my niche and I started pursuing this and focusing on, these guys their ages were very familiar to me. What they did was very familiar to me. It just felt very aligned, very authentic. It was like as if the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. And it's like, ever since I've done that, it's just been so authentic, I guess you would say, for me. And, I talk to these great guys every day that, come to me, a person that's never played a professional sport in their lives. But I think for men too, a lot of times they just have never had anybody listen to them for an hour, and they don't talk with each other the same way that women talk with women.
That's safe space, right?
Friends. Yeah.
Which for you, probably, I'm going to assume, probably feels like home. But back to having your boys at home, because you are that safe space for them. Like what the image that came to mind when you said it was you being a lighthouse. Yeah, no, it's really interesting that you say this. I remember we were always walking, the boys would, when I say a lot of boys were at my house, like I remember one New Year's Day, I took 19 kids to a diner for breakfast. And the CFO of the diner came up to me and she's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm the CFO of this diner. And I was like, oh, great. Nice. She goes, we're just trying to figure out who you are. Like, are you a religious group? Are you a sports team? And I was like, no. I said, these are just the guys that spent the night at my house last night. She's like, all of these people spent the night at your house? Like, I said, yeah. And so it was so interesting because we'd be watching a sporting event and I was sitting in this particular chair, and there was every time, it was loud in there, TV guys, whatever. And that they would pull up a chair beside me. And it was like it was like, live coaching, in-person live coaching or something, because they'd pull up their chair, they'd do their download with me, tell me what was going on in their lives. Nobody else was listening because it was loud and they were watching the game. And, I essentially was coaching them. And then, like a guy would come over, like, how much longer are you going to be talking to her? I really need to talk to her. And so it was just like this, it was kind of that, or I'd sit out on my porch and they'd come out on the porch and talk to me. So it's a very comfortable, very familiar thing. And just with what we're seeing with the growth of the coaching industry, the acceptance of mental well-being and how important, like what I say is, I don't care how strong you are, I don't care what your stats are. If you don't have mental health, you do not have health. And so if you think you're doing great now and your mindset's off, if you can get your mindset and your emotions straight, you're
like you haven't even touched the possibilities of what you're capable of. So yeah.
I love all that. And I'm interested in like where was the resistance when someone said doing coaching? Was it because you weren't a professional athlete that you thought that had to tie in? Like,
well, I
would
have
you
to
have had
say
any
that
resistance at all, I guess would be my question.
that has, obviously, I mean, a lot of the men I speak with are Black men. I'm a short white woman from the South. It's like I've never played a professional sport in my life. I love sports and played a lot of sports, but certainly not professionally. And it's like, why would you want to talk to me? And the first guy in the NFL I ever talked to was a Black guy. And he said, I said, why would you want to talk to a woman? He goes, for the very fact that you're a woman. He said, my first coach was a male. And he said, I don't know how else to put it other than to say that maybe it's a machismo thing or whatever. He said, I am just not going to allow myself to be as vulnerable with a man as I am with a woman in telling all my stuff. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing that was very interesting is whenever I was out with these guys, these were my friends. Like it's weird to me. Like I have a friend playing in the Super Bowl this weekend, and he is a really well-known player. I don't coach him, but I've known him since he was 13. And, I just think of him as this kid that I've always known. And, when I'm out with him, it's like this, it's craziness. I mean, I can't even believe people, and any of the others, it's just like people coming up to them. You're just trying to have dinner. They're used to it. It's part of their life. I kind of go into protective mode, like, leave this guy alone, let him have dinner or whatever. But I always see people asking something of them, always asking. And like one guy, and then there's this kind of code that if you've made it out, you're indebted to everyone left behind. Mm-hmm. And so and that's one of the biggest things I deal with. Mm-hmm. Or they deal with that I help them deal with. And so I remember one day, this guy, we were on a Zoom call and he holds up his phone and goes, see this, every single text on here is somebody asking for something, including you. And I was like horrified. And he's like, except the only difference is you're asking me how I am. Mm-hmm. And he said, and so it was like, I always saw people asking, taking, acting like knowing an athlete made you somebody, like they're just a person with a talent, like you're a wonderful woman with a great skill set for coaching. They just have a talent that we feed and that we pay for. And it's on TV, and so I felt like I was taking something from them. And then I was getting coached because I think the best of the best always get coached. Sure. Doctors go to doctors and coaches get coached. And this person said to me, like, you're not taking anything from them. You're there for them. You're offering them something. You're not asking them for their money. You're saying, I can help you. Like you're offering help to them. And the trade-off is that they pay you, but you're not like, oh, I want to, I'm asking something from you. Like you're giving something in return. And once I realized that it was an equal trade and that I wasn't bothering them, I wasn't asking them, that somehow, it was my own thinking that was the problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because being able to contribute to them just being heard and seen gives so much more to everyone else. Because of who they become when someone does hear and see as the humans part of them, not the one that's not the entertainment part of them, right?
Oh yeah.
Like in yoga, I think about this. We say like, I won't take the flowers and I won't take the stones. Don't take the flowers. Don't take the stones. Because if you get all that praise, you're also going to have to get the other side of it. That's what I think the 50-50 is. It's like everything has another side to it. There's a shadow for every light. And all of the focus and attention and everyone loving on you can just as easily, there's that many people who are not loving on you.
Oh,
and it's so painful.
It's almost like, really when you think about it, it's like I hear people say like, I can't stand that guy. They're talking about an athlete. Do you know him? Do you have any interaction with him? You may not like the way he presents on the court or plays on the field. You may not like his style of play, but you don't like that human being. Like, I see us do that with actors and actresses, performers, politicians. Like, do you know that person? And it's such a big statement to make about another human being.
Well, I think about Brene Brown talking about if you're not going to be in the ring, like you're sitting on the sidelines, basically putting down and saying what they should be doing or calling them or critiquing, yet you're sitting here in the stands, not without the courage to get in the arena yourself.
Or the ability.
Yeah. Well, and I don't do much with sports at all. And it's because we talked about this a couple of weekends ago for Little Dribblers. My daughter was playing ball and I got so amped up that the referees weren't calling and they were like all over our kids. And I found myself on the floor as I don't even know if I probably shouldn't have been coaching or assistant, whatever. They were little. And I'm like pounding my hand. Like, I'm so mad. I'm basically crawling at them. And I'm like, I did this I was so amped up for justice, the unfairness and I was like, I got to check out of this. And I checked out of any type of competitive anything because I could not handle what it brought up in me and the hate that I had, the resentment that I had for someone else and the unfairness. And I was like, still today, I have 12 grandbabies and most of them play sports. And I'm just not interested in watching or participating in the sport. I love them, but I can't take interest in what humanity does to people in that state. So I can't imagine the pressure.
Oh, it's, what's that kid's name? Damar Hamlin, who was the kid that had the cardiac arrest on the football field. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And the guy that tackled him did nothing wrong. It was a clean play. It was a clean tackle. We still don't know all the ifs, ands, whys, or how's that happened. But I did everything I could to get in touch with the kid that had tackled him, because forever, that's going to be a visual, it's going to be a video that people see forever. And that kid's name's always going to be attached to that, to that cardiac arrest. And so I did everything I could in my power to get in touch with him, because I was just like, I will coach him for free. I will talk to him. I'll do whatever and the way that kid was being treated in social media for nothing wrong. How many tackles are there a weekend in, NFL football? And this is one that, we don't know if it's a physical thing for Hamlin. We don't have any idea, but this kid did nothing wrong and was, eviscerated in social media. And for you and I, that may not be that big a deal, but for young people where their whole self, their whole beings are on social media, it was dumbfounding. And it was just like staggering to see what human beings were able to say to another human being.
Yeah. And their livelihood and performance, that if you're not mentally and emotionally well, everything is affected, right? Everything, not just your job on the field, but your relationship with every human being.
Yeah, this fellow
that lens.
It's amazing having the luxury of working with this baseball player for the last 4 or 5 games of the season last year, and then throughout this entire off season. He's getting ready to go to spring training, and we'll have his first game sometime in March. To read my coaching notes, I was talking to his agent. I would say, and I have my kids all sign NDAs. I call them kids; they're grown men. I know that. But I was telling his agent, I said, if you could read the first month of notes that I have on this guy, and the last month of notes I have on this guy, and to see, you wouldn't even believe it was the same person, and to see where he is. He was coming off the noise and the chatter of people talking about him. He couldn't believe how much that he let that impact him. Low self-confidence, not present. That's another thing that we see a lot of, is they're not present because they're living in the past, like the past game. They're, oh my God, am I going to be able to do anything in the next game? What are people going to say? So it's like I had a coach say, well, can you promise me after working with him, he's going to shoot 25 points, score 25 points a game? I said, you've been working with him for 4 years. Can you promise me he's doing that tonight? It's like, I can promise you, if he does the work, that this man will be the most complete man he's ever been in his life. And he will show up better for his sport as a human being, for his family, for his relationships. And this is what this guy said. He said, I can't remember enjoying my holidays more because I was so present. I wasn't thinking about what I needed to be doing because I knew I was doing enough in my training. I haven't been looking forward to going to spring training in years. I am so excited to get to Arizona. Just things like, and then a friend of his lost in one of the divisional playoff games in football, and he FaceTimed the guy, and the guy took his call immediately. He's like, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to chat with you about the game. I'm sorry you lost. How you doing? And because he never had enough time, because he was always living in the past or the future, he was like, I'm present for my friends. And he's like, this guy was dumbfounded and he, immediately thought something was wrong. And he said, we had an hour conversation, and that was an hour I would have never had before because I wasn't present.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So busy either in the past or protecting the future because of the past, right?
Exactly.
And so presence is right in the middle and what's happening in this moment, but everything that's going to protect you from the future, according to our mind, is to make sure that the past doesn't happen again. And then we're living in the past. And then when you have to face all of this on social media, the pressure of the public, the pressure, even for us as coaches, because we're on social media and we put ourselves out there. And I mean, there are people who've had bad experiences that want to attack someone, right? And so it could be something that's just, whether the pitch didn't go the way it was supposed to, or the literal pitch, your post didn't go the way that, it came out a certain way. Don't you think it's because people are just so angry and haven't been heard, and there's just so much, we just lack an emotional intelligence and stability?
Oh, without question, the emotional intelligence and stability. And, what I find myself coaching on so much, Kim, is reaction versus response. Yeah. And, I know, like whenever we're in reaction, that's our primitive brain. That's all fear-based, fight, freeze, I got to get out of here. Things are not safe. And anytime you say I had a reaction to something, that's you protecting yourself. That's you coming from fear. Whereas responding, as humans, we have the luxury of pausing, thinking about, we get to decide on purpose. We get to decide ahead of time on how we want to respond. And once you realize that really the only two things you control in life, as far as I'm concerned, are your thoughts and your responses. You get to control both of those things. And if you can learn to manage your thoughts, control your responses, and stay out of reaction, that's where real heartfelt emotion, and I don't want to get woo-woo here, but I think I look at reaction as fear and response as love, because you've been thoughtful about it. You've been deliberate about it. It may not be something that somebody wants to hear, but it's not something you're just spewing. You've taken the time and you've crafted a message and you're delivering it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think about the year that I took those words, because I take a word every year to focus on, and it was to not be so reactive, because I was so reactive to everything. And I didn't know that it was coming, like these were triggers that I was like, that were violently, like they were just bouncing around in my body. And I was like, just trying to get rid of them. And that was one of the hardest years of my life, is to not react or not shut down. And to just stay. And
how did it change your life though?
Oh my God. It's the person I am today because of it. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I'd never heard or seen anything about that, right? No one ever taught me about that, other than saying I was like terrible at communicating.
Yeah. No, I
lived, or I was like, I had a bad attitude, or like things like that.
A lot.
But they didn't tell me what to do about it. They gave me a book. I remember that. To hold, to pause. That's where I came up with the SOS, stop, open, stay. Those 90 seconds, like, shh, but to say it and to do it are two different things, because you don't have access to the frontal cortex when you're in the reactive mode. Like the chemical response takes over because you haven't grown the muscle for responding. Responding is a muscle. Yeah.
And what I find too is, I was incredibly reactionary. I lived in reaction, and, I'm good with my words. So I could just, obliterate people with my words, or obliterate a situation with my words. And I thought that was power. And when I I would say very rarely now that I react. And when I do, it is literally about a 24-hour recovery period for me. And my reactions are nowhere near as extreme as they were on a daily basis back in the day. But it's like, it just takes me out of, it takes me out of my rhythm. It's exhausting. And it's like, it may seem like a forever thing to pause for 90 seconds or, just pause or say, I don't have an answer I like right now. I want to get back with you on that. If you have to take yourself away from it to craft this thing, and until you get good at the practice of it. But once you get good at the practice of it, like you and I, we had practiced reaction. That was what we had practiced. We had practiced responding. Now that we live in a world where we make every effort to respond, and we've practiced that a lot, that comes more naturally to us. And you think about young men, like young men that are all about, respect, and, you're not showing me respect, and, I'm doing this, and it's all about performance. It's a lot of reaction. And so to take them and on the field or on the court, whatever, they have to react. Like that is how they stay alive in their sport, is they react very quickly. But to shift them to seeing in their everyday lives, and then it does impact their sport. Like I don't have to react to a person the way I react to a ball. I can respond to this person and the humanness of it and the emotions of it, and that they realize they're not soft because they are in their emotions.
Right. Because we've been taught to turn our emotions off to get it done. Right.
Yeah. You're an automaton. Just do.
Yeah. But then the very creation or co-creation of anything involves presence with curiosity and feeling it, like being, that's how we created an advance, is through our imagination.
Yeah.
And so when we turn our emotions off, we turn off that access, but we don't even know they're turned off because we were so young when it happened. And so how has that been for you, teaching your clients, these professional athletes, to like pause and open for that? Like what do you think is the biggest obstacle?
I think it's like anything else. It's like going to the gym. If you're used to lifting a 10-pound dumbbell and that's all you ever lift, then if somebody says, okay, I want you to lift a 15-pound dumbbell, that's gonna be harder and you're going to get sore from that. It's very uncomfortable. And so, human beings tend to do what's comfortable for them, and they practice, like what they've practiced, because they don't have to think about it much. And so these guys have practiced they haven't ever even thought about their emotion. Like, if I'm asking a guy, like, how does that make you feel when you think that, how does that make you feel? They oftentimes in the beginning struggle to even come up with emotion. And, like, I'll run with mad, sad, happy, glad in that moment. But it's like, we want to get like, how does that really feel for you? And, and to see them a month later, like, oh, they get into their emotions straight away. It's just practice. It's just like letting them know, like this one young man, he was like, and this guy came in and he's like, well, so-and-so's better than you. He's gotten this award. He's gotten that award. And he's like, he's constantly needling me. I was like, well, is he making the records that you're making? He said, no. I was like, he can say whatever he wants. Like, he gets to be him. You get to be you. And this is one thing we really work on a lot, is who's the man you want to be? Who is the man you want to be, despite the circumstances, despite what's going on around you, despite this peer pressure? And there's lots of that in their lives. It's like, and they oftentimes have never even had a man that they can model. Like, I want to be a good husband. I want to treat women well. I want to be a good partner. I want to be a good dad. Many of them don't have an example of any of that. And so it's like designing the man they want to be. Like, this is the man I want to be. You get to design him and be him. And that's a foreign concept to them. But then when they realize it and they start stepping into that person, and that this guy comes in and says, oh, but he's one more, like, he's better than you, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, you don't have to say anything. No response is a response. No is a complete response. Or like, I hear you, like, you're like, I hear you. Like, you hear them and it means nothing to you because you know who you are and you know that you're not going to react and that his comment isn't worth a response.
So good. I'm so curious right now. Like I'm thinking for you, I want to design your future. No, I'm joking. You work privately with one-on-one clients, but it would be so wise for a team to take you on. I bet
well,
you
know, I will say for, let's just take, football, basketball, and baseball major leagues, they all have mental health professionals on their teams now. And I really applaud that. The reason I don't want to do that is I would be willing to go and talk to them. I would be willing to go in. I probably would still want to be paid by the athlete because in my talk with agents and I have their best interests at heart. How they perform pays an agent, my goal is for them to be the most mentally sound person they can be in the world and in their sports world. And athletes have an aversion to working with these people. I think there's some leagues that require that they work with them 3 times and then they've checked that box. So they talk with them 3 times and never talk with them again. And as an agent said to me, he said, and there like, as I say, I sign NDAs and there should always be complete confidentiality, but just take this scenario, like if a mental health professional is employed by a team and the general manager of that team comes up to that mental health professional and says, I know you've been working with so-and-so. We're about to offer him an $80 million contract. Do you think he's mentally sound enough for that? If that mental health professional says questionable, he's not really violating anything, but questionable, that's throwing that athlete under the bus. What are the chances that he'll get that $80 million contract? If I'm working with an athlete, I have nothing to gain by their contract, nothing whatsoever. I'm not tied to their contract. I'm not tied to their performance. I'm not tied to anything but them and wanting them to see them be their best. So that's why I choose to work with individuals. I would happily speak to sports teams. I wouldn't mind having a sports team, bring me in. I think there's also work with spouses and partners of athletes.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of work there because these guys travel so crazily and are home a lot. And then, as I said, a lot of them don't have examples of what the man that they want to be within those relationships. But as far as working with teams, I'm a never say never girl because, there could be other ways of doing that. But and I know myself, if anybody ever came up and asked me that, I wouldn't answer that question. But,
it brings me back to the whole thing of having, like the insurance, having health coaches too. It's not a personal decision. When it becomes a criteria or when it goes back to the homogenization of everybody needs and everybody's the same and this is your minimum and this is your maximum. I totally get that. Yeah. I can see that. Well, I'm talking about the spouses, that really hit it with me because when I'm working with entrepreneurs, business owners, and they're not in business with their partner or with their family or their kids, it is such a huge issue when they become the new growth identity, right? Whenever they change into the version who gets the next thing done, and how that changes the frequency of the relationships, because you have to become like someone stepping from an $8 million contract into an $80 million contract is going to change that person completely. You're not the same person, and
you're the same person, but your identity has changed forever. Yeah.
Your perception has changed forever, for sure.
That'll work. Yeah.
Well, you're from Louisiana. So it's like just moving to another state, right? Someone stepping into New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette is going to have, they're going to walk away a little different.
Yeah. I'm actually not from Louisiana. I grew up in North Carolina and I have had the luxury of living in Louisiana for some time, but I've lived, I think, in 8 states and I've lived in Europe. And so I really look at that too as a person that grew up in North Carolina and stayed in North Carolina through college. And then my life has taken me all over. I'm so grateful for that because I've encountered so many, I thought I grew up in the South until I moved to Louisiana. And then I knew what the South was,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just an experience, just a weekend, just a week, just a month, just an experience. It's a whole nother world.
Yeah. And I often say, people aren't people are their culture. And there's no more cultured probably state in the country than Louisiana.
It's for sure been like a lot of what I had to overcome because it's
Oh, I
so
can imagine having
strong
been
and
there. Yeah.
yeah, and so
It's an identity. That's an identity.
Yeah,
For sure.
Anyway, is there anything that I did not ask you that you would want the public to know, or anyone that is watching this, about who you work with, what you help them do, or anything that you wanted to share that would just be a takeaway for someone who has a family member, or maybe even someone like maybe it's their children who are a professional athlete and they can see that there's a struggle, but really doesn't even know that there's a coach for that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your your viewers and listeners. I think you've covered a lot of it. I would say as we move forward, it's not something I've explored. It's something I'm getting ready to explore with parents that have even high schoolers, college, with the new NIL thing coming in, name, image, likeness, that allows what's the word I'm looking for? Not professional athletes to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And a lot of these kids are making a lot of money. I would love to work with those people as well. I do work with people that are not professional athletes, a lot of times just high performers. Anyone that, my message resonated with, like, absolutely reach out. If I'm not the person for you, Kim can attest to the fact that we have an amazing network of coaches that are available. More than anything, I just want everybody to realize that, without mental health, you are not a healthy person. More than that, more than anything, it's just like mental health is health. And, if you need help, if you, reach out, get that support. And, if you're excelling at what you're doing and you don't have the mindset support and the mental health support, what I can promise you is, like, you are literally a fraction of what you're capable of being. And as a human being and as a performer. So that's all I would offer, is to just find your person. And if I resonate with you, I'd love to speak with you, but more than anything, just find your person.
I love that. Even a fraction of the potential.
Yeah, fraction. Somebody said, working with Michele Demetriou makes stars superstars. And I thought that was a great compliment, but it's really not true, because I don't do the work. They do the work. I say I think there are 168 hours in a week, and I work with them 1 hour a week. They have tons of access to me, but 1 hour a week. And the other 167 hours, they're on their own for the most part in a typical coaching situation. And they have to be doing the work to take it to the next level. So I think I just see us as facilitators for helping them reach that potential. I don't change anybody's life. They change their own lives, but I'm blessed to be along for the ride.
Love that. Thank you for coming on. Can you we're going to put a link below of where they can contact you, but what's your best social media channel if someone wants to just start with following you?
You can just, I just switched everything. I think it's just Michele Demetriou. Just Michele Demetriou on Instagram. To be perfectly honest, I'm not terribly active. Something I need to work on. But Michele Demetriou. So
I'll go grab the link. Yeah, your Instagram link.
Spelling at the link.
Yeah, for some people, it's it's being inspired before taking that action, just getting to know a little bit more about us. I think that's something that has happened in the coaching industry. There's a lot of marketers more than coaches. And so now I'm seeing where people really want to get to know the person.
Yeah, no. And a lot of people drop into my DMs, and it is Michele Demetriou. Well, it used to be Michele Demetriou Coaching, but Michele Demetriou is long enough. So Michele Demetriou on Instagram, and a lot of people drop in, and I do make a lot of connections through there. So even though I'm not terribly active, like out there active, I am involved in that platform.
Perfect. So I will go and grab the link, and I'll make sure that it's posted below, and your website is also here. So if anyone wants to